When this Tory government was elected in December 2019, pundits asked about its agenda. They wondered what would be its central driving force. Of course, the government had its line. It spoke about being a people's government. It spoke about levelling up. Today, that shallow facade has been totally discredited, with the government overseeing the biggest fall in living standards since records began, hitting the poorest hardest by policies like the scrapping of the universal credit uplift and the real terms cut to pensions and social security. And this bill yet again demonstrates what this government is really about. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, there has been a clear thread running through this government's legislation, because it's not about levelling up or building back better or whatever empty slogan they're using today. It's a growing and unmistakable authoritarianism, and that's clearly seen in the bill that we're debating today. The benches opposite might complain, but look at what they're doing. From the Overseas Operations Act and its attempt to effectively decriminalise torture, to the Spy Cops Act and giving state agents the licence to torture and commit violence, sexual violence. We also see it in the Elections Act and its attack on the independence of the Electoral Commission and attempt to rig elections with millions of disproportionately poor and marginalised people at risk of losing their vote. We then see it in the Judicial Review and Courts Act, which human rights lawyers describe as an alarming attack on our basic rights and which abolishes vital safeguards for our freedoms. Then the Nationality and Borders Act, breaking Britain's 71-year commitment to the Refugee Convention and deporting victims of war and torture to Rwanda. And then we have the Northern Ireland. No, many people have told you, so please just stay sitting down. We then see it in the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, set for a second reading in this House tomorrow, which has been described by one human rights organisation as an exercise in denying justice. Stop heckling me and just listen. How about that? Thank you very much. We see it in the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, set for a second reading in this House tomorrow, which has been described by one human rights organisation as an exercise in denying justice. And of course, also in the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act and today's bill. The first bans noisy protests and risks criminalising Gypsy, Roma and traveller communities out of existence. And the second, which the government is trying to push through before the Police Act is even put into effect, repackaging measures that have already been rejected by members in the other place. This public order bill introduces so-called serious disruption prevention orders, which can be used to ban individuals from protesting and can be even applied to those who have never ever committed a crime. It amounts, as a human rights group Liberty states, and I quote, to a staggering escalation of the government's clampdown on dissent. It massively extends police powers to undertake stop and search of protests, including, as many members have mentioned, without suspicion of any wrongdoing. Something police officers themselves seem quite alarmed about, with one officer saying, and I quote, "A little inconvenience is more acceptable than a police state." Just as we know, black people are already 14 times more likely to be stopped and searched without reasonable grounds. We can be sure that this new power will be disproportionately used against black and other ethnic minority citizens, including with the predictable effect of deterring people from raising their voice against injustice. And we know that it doesn't stop there. The bill's vague and ambiguous language means that anyone walking around with a bike lock, a roll of tape, or any number of everyday objects could be found guilty of the new offence of an intention to lock on and face an unlimited fine. These are just some of the measures included in this bill, which are clearly aimed at climate campaigners. And no one will be happier than the fossil fuel industry and the companies that fund the party opposite. They're attacking our freedoms to criminalise those who stand up for a livable planet for us all. Madam Deputy Speaker, members opposite like to talk about freedom and liberty. They make out like they're the champions of democracy and human rights. But Madam Deputy Speaker, a government committed to freedom doesn't try to let its soldiers commit torture. It doesn't let state agents commit sexual violence. It doesn't deliberately make it harder for citizens to vote. It doesn't deport refugees to detention camps 4,000 miles away. It doesn't try to privatise a broadcaster just because of its rigorous coverage. And a government committed to freedom certainly doesn't crack down on protest and dissent. But Madam Deputy Speaker, that's exactly what this government is trying to do. And we have a name for a government that does those kinds of things. It's called an authoritarian government, and that's what this Tory government is, and we all have a duty to oppose it.